Hi, welcome everybody to this, I would say 17th World Quality Report that we have been producing in a row. I'm very proud of it that we have been able to do this. The theme of this year is adapting to new emerging worlds. How do we do that in quality engineering and testing space? My name is Mark Brune. I'm the global leader for quality engineering and testing at Capgemini and Sogeti. And today in the presentation I'm joined by some very interesting speakers and lead authors of the report. So let's go in the round. Maybe Tal, you can go first and introduce yourself.
Hey Mark, thank you. Happy and excited to be here today. So Talavi Joseph, and I'm heading the business unit of application delivery management and OpenX.
Thank you, Tal. Kanchan, over to you.
Hello everyone. I am Kanchan Bhunde and I lead the Quality Engineering Center of Excellence here in India at Sogeti.
And last but not least, Jeff. We have Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. My name is Jeff, and I have responsibility for our North America banking and capital markets testing practice for our financial services team.
All right, let's start talking about the World Quality Report, what it is. As I said earlier, it's the 17th version of the World Quality Report. The World Quality Report actually is the largest survey on the topic of quality engineering and testing that we, as in a joint partnership with OpenText, Capgemini and Sogeti, we are publishing every year. What we are really looking at is what are the important trends in testing, what is happening with quality assurance, how are organizations adapting to new developments that we see in that space. This year, one major change that we have done compared to the other years, we have actually increased the number of organizations that we survey. So for this research, for this year, we survey 2,000 organizations across the globe, across industries. And we have, as every year, we have diligently chosen what are the important topics to investigate. Clearly, AI is a major topic everywhere, and also how AI is impacting quality engineering and testing is important to validate. But we also have other main topics that are still of very relevance and very important. Automation, the automation of quality engineering and testing. The aspect of data and data quality, which is of course an increasing topic of importance. We also looked for, I think for the last 10 years, we looked at the adaptation of quality engineering to the agile way of working. So organizations that are transforming to agile, how do they adapt to their quality engineering practices in that front? This year we also re-looked again at the enterprise quality engineering, so that is more the, you might say, the core systems, the enterprise-wide systems, the ERP type of systems that organizations have. And last but not least, we also have a 6th chapter that we are looking at, where we're looking at the actually shifting right of quality, so the moving more to quality measures that you can take close to the production area or even in the production area, so production monitoring, site reliability engineering, that are topics that we typically investigate in that chapter. So for this webinar, we don't want to handle all the topics, but what we will do is we will focus on the ones that we think are the most important ones. And the first one is AI. And my key question is on this topic is, what are the key findings that we have in the report around the adoptions of AI, Gen AI and agentic solutions in the quality engineering space? Kanchan, can you start answering this question in the first place?
So we are seeing some very, very interesting findings in this area. And for the last couple of years, we have all seen people going from one end of the spectrum to another. And while what we've seen is that this entire euphoria around Gen AI applications, that has now kind of, people have come to reality. So what is happening is, last year if you saw, the non-adopters were only 4%, whereas now this year it has increased to 11%. So there is a certain sense of reality check, exactly what is the art of possible in this whole area. But if you look at the ones who are in the process of implementing GenAI, 15%, if you look at the other end of the spectrum, there are 15% who are scaling GenAI. So that's also very positive news. Whereas in the middle, you see that there are 43% which are experimenting and 30% which are operational already. So overall, some of the organizations are probably feeling stuck there because 43% you can still see doing some POCs, whereas 30% are seeming to find their way now. So overall, what we've also seen from the other reports is the average productivity gain that has happened because of GenAI has come to about 19%. So this seems to be a little bit contrary to earlier whatever was thought of, like the kind of tall claims that were done for GenAI. Realistically, on the ground, an average productivity gain, what we see is about 19%. And there are reasons for this trend. One of the reasons is the difficulty in integration, limitations of data, mainly privacy and security risks, reliability concerns, right, because of the hallucination issue. So all of these contribute to the kind of cautious optimism that we can see here. Overall, the trust, control, and operational readiness, these are the three main trends that we see. Now, if we look at the entire GenAI space and we go ahead, it is moving into agentic, as we all have seen so many different people coming up with so many different examples of what is the art of possible. And if you look at that, 41% are optimistic about the advent of AI, right? So if you look at the proactive and the optimistic together, these are the ones who seem to be fast movers in that area. 34% are still cautious and remaining are skeptical, right? So similar trend, we see a bump in the middle, and the reason for that is also similar, right? Because people have seen how GenAI has progressed, what kind of benefits they are getting, and with agentic, some of those issues get resolved and we are able to see a lot of different changes. So that is how we see this GenAI advent in case of this report this year. Over
Thank
to
you,
you.
Kanchan. Jeff, Kanchan spoke about agentic solutions. Have you already seen something in reality there in the quality engineering space? What is your experience around that topic?
So good question. I do think that many organizations, and I know on the slide back, are kind of in the experimentation phase from an agentic solution standpoint. There are some programs where we're beginning to identify specific use cases where there is a benefit from an agentic solution and where we do have the necessary runway to be able to experiment with that. I think that when you look at just the prompt engineering IDE-based solutions, those are fairly mature. And I think the World Quality Report, if you look at the use cases that organizations are pursuing for that, the most common ones are automation or test script design, as well as test data. And I think those are the lowest hanging fruits. Now, coming back to an agentic solution, I think organizations are going to begin to leverage agentic solutions to perform those actions for specific minute activities. So yeah, I do think there's going to be an increase in maturity as well as drive and push towards usage of that. And I think a lot of that will come from tooling partners that we have in organizations providing software testing solutions. I don't know, Tal, if you have any thoughts on maybe where you think agentic solutions are going to go?
Yeah, and thank you, Jeff. And I'd like to kind of refer to what you and Kanchan were speaking about in terms of maturity. So we're definitely seeing it with our customers. We're definitely moving from the, call it the AI hype to practical realization and really focusing about the things that matter, about the measurable outcomes, right? So we've all been experimenting and exploring, and now we see companies are now in the rationalization phase, right? Learning where it truly adds value in the space of software delivery. And trust, I think you both mentioned it. Trust is a big word, but is a key to everything, right? It starts with one agent to agentic framework, but they gotta have the trust, because we look at non-deterministic behaviors, hallucinations, right? It all consists of risk that impacts the trust. that's what I think is that adoption rate will grow now in a more like phased approach, and that will go alongside with, the understanding of how we test AI-based application, right? How we trust them, how we define the ROI, the KPIs, right? And it's all still premature, but it's evolving. It's getting more and more. And I think also with experience and governance checkpoints. So I think we will expect maturity and more trust increase, and that will obviously drive higher adoption and clear ROI. In regards to agentic, I always say it started with manual, went into automation phase, and now everybody starts speaking about autonomous, right? It started with one agent having one role, one task to perform, and then we moved to more, flow of agents orchestrating, various agents. Then I think we will carefully need to understand what are the things we'd like to achieve, leveraging agentic frameworks, and also how do we measure them, and that will get us the trust in becoming more and more and moving, from automation and having one task being automated to basically a much more complex series of tasks. I would say a goal being achieved. So definitely, and I think the whole testing agents and agentic will evolve. The approach will evolve more and more. So we'll see a combination of best practices and tools, right, that will take part in it.
Clearly, thank you, Tal. Very good on that front. And I think while AI and agentic are, of course, on top of mind of everybody, we also have these other important topics that, in my view, are still relevant. So one of the topics that we have is, of course, around automation, test automation, or the automation of quality engineering, a topic that we have been surveying for, I think, for all the reports that we had in place over the 17 years. Jeff, what findings did we have on this part? What was striking for you?
Yeah, I think so. One thing I think to point out is when you look at the different chapters we have in the World Quality Report, they're all intertwined, and all have different connections. So you'll see a lot of generative AI and the impact that it has on automation in general in terms of the coverage that there may be, the strategies that they may develop, and just how they're developing those test scripts today. So if I kind of take that lens and understand how everything bleeds together, one thing that was, I guess, somewhat disappointing is the number of organizations that have an enterprise-wide test or automation strategy is still relatively low. Only 8% of organizations that were surveyed have a standardized automation framework that is enterprise-wide. And if I look kind of back on maybe why that is, there was a huge push probably about 10 years ago to get to more of a centralized quality engineering organization across an enterprise. There was a huge push to completely federate that. And in doing so, organizations gave the power to individual value streams, portfolios, or lines of business to kind of dictate whatever tooling platform they want to leverage. So you've had this very fragmented automation approach, and where each individual team has a different strategy, different approach, different technology stack, but it's reducing the amount of automation that you have. So if I look at and comparing that to kind of the average automation coverage, it's still only like 33%, which is extremely disappointing given that we've been in automation. We've had automation for, I think, Mercury and IBM invented the automation tools back in the 90s, and we're still struggling with, developing of that. So if I then kind of connect the dots with, generative AI, I do think that generative AI will have a significant impact. So we did ask respondents this year, what impact will generative AI have on your tooling strategy, as well as what impact or what percentage of automation scripts have been developed using generative AI platforms. I think today it's about 25% on average of organizations who responded using some form of generative AI to develop their automation test cases. And I see that significantly increasing. And if I kind of tie that back to the graph that we see here, the chart we see here, 43% of organizations are transitioning into a decentralized approach towards an enterprise strategy. And 28% are planning to move into more of an enterprise strategy. So these organizations, I think, are beginning to incorporate use of generative AI into their platforms, beginning to standardize across that organization. So I do anticipate that 8% that have an enterprise-wide strategy to increase. I don't think it's going to magically go to 50 or 60% in the next year, but I do anticipate a significant increase. And then if I tie that back, I think Mark and Kanchan had kind of touched on some of the benefits from generative AI. What we found is that was 19% in terms of efficiency gains. As you look at now the usage of prompt engineering based solutions, you have generative AI solutions kind of incorporated into standalone automation platforms as well as agentic solutions. I think that 25% that are generating automation scripts today with the generative AI platform will significantly increase. And I do anticipate the productivity improvement and savings also increasing. I know from a banking standpoint, we've seen that maturing quite a bit. Kanchan, from your perspective, how do you see the automation industry changing?
Yeah, absolutely. You're spot on, Jeff. So with this agentic AI coming into the picture, so if you look at some of those scenarios, right, automation scenarios where it was difficult to write a code, which became very, very complex to automate. Maybe scenarios where you have got a lot of different combinations to test, or there were some which were very, very they became some of those roadblocks when you look at having full-fledged automation, say even in a given application. Now with Gen AI and these agents, it is becoming a lot more easier to actually build these kind of automations. And that, I believe, is going to play a major role in actually pushing ahead the automation, where we can see a lot of changes that will happen. So some of these technical roadblocks will certainly get impacted. However, I believe that the focus on automation is still going to be needed for organizations to really make a difference here. And one of the other things I would like to mention is also about the speed of delivery. Everyone needs delivery very fast, but then sometimes quality engineering becomes a bottleneck for them. So we believe that this is an opportunity for organizations to actually cross that bump and go to the next side, and then actually implement a lot of more automation so that overall their speed of delivery also increases with the right quality, of course. Yatal, you have any points on this?
Yeah, so thank you. I completely agree with everything that was said. I want to kind of inject another dimension which is, as we see more code being generated by code assistants, right? AI generated code with it. We definitely, consider it more risky, right? And we see it, by the way. There are some initial results about how buggy it is, or how much of it hallucinations there are there in terms of the code. And I think as more risk being introduced, there will be less tolerance for that, right? Because those organizations will not compromise on quality. This is the one thing that could jeopardize a lot. So I think automation will be a key, period, right? And again, with agents and agentic, I think it will become easier and easier to actually generate automation, right? So less skill set. Yes, a lot of, mindset of automated thinking, you got to have that. But I think it will become a key because, again, they talk about 44% of the code up to 50% by 27 will be generated by AI. Then I think we'll need more and more testing to do. And this testing has to be, first of all, very, I would say, targeted on the risk. So there will be a lot of automation around assessing and evaluating the risk based on the code changes, right? So we'll see automation there as well, like insights and analytics into, the change impact. But definitely in testing, completely agree. We'll have to see a surge in automation. Otherwise, with the speed and with the amount of code to be tested, there's no other way, to cope with that. So.
Yes, indeed. So with more possibilities to generate more, but also to be as fast as we all need to be, the role of quality is becoming only growing of importance. I believe that too. So beyond, we talked about AI, we talked about agentic, we talked about automation, but beyond that, what are other key factors for success if we think about this? Well, how do we maintain the level of quality? How do we create a successful quality operation? Kanchan, what are the views that the World Quality Report Survey has provided on that topic?
Yeah, so there are some very, very important aspect, and one of them is, of course, the test data, the quality of test data, which has been an Achilles heel, as we say, for so many years in this space, isn't it? And this is where, again, what we've seen is that the quality of data that was available for testing, and it is not just the volume, but also the variability of the data, all different aspects of data, creating that itself used to be a big challenge. But now what we see, which is heartening, is that there has been a significant jump in the usage of GenAI for test data, in the test data lifecycle, for generating this kind of test data. And 34% of the organizations, if you look at the first two, they are actually trying to use more of GenAI in the test data management strategies. Whereas this 31% are still piloting, and 31% again are exploring. So that is very good to see that because this is an area which has been the weakness for quite some time, and that is why this is an area where a major impact will be seen as well. So while it has been a challenge, it is also the biggest opportunity. You see this 5% which are not adopting, that also has gone down from 11% last year, which is also a big number to look at. Overall, synthetic data generation average percentage has gone up to 25%. So this is also very positive. Having said that, the ownership of test data generation, that still remains fragmented. So there's no central strategy, central theme of how this test data gets generated across the organization, how it is used across the organization. So that is an area of improvement which is still existing. Ownership of the test data remains fragmented. And one more stark statistic is about the usage of unmasked data, production data. So what happens with production data, we all know that it has so much of personal information, it might have so many different issues because of which it was not used, or it was used in a very risky way. That now has gone up drastically. So we see that this is another area where some of those areas which were not being tested before because of want of data are also now becoming more and more in scope, and of course resulting into better quality as we go along, right? So this was one of the areas. Jeff, you want to make a comment on any other or even data or any other observations?
Yeah, I guess one more point, I think, on a data quality standpoint. I know Tal touched on it as well, as organizations need to have automation to be able to move faster and develop applications and features faster. Data becomes a bottleneck. And if you look at how organizations have traditionally provisioned data, it was to take data from production, mask it, and then allocate it to different teams. I think what the challenge you have there is data refreshes aren't on demand. They're typically quarterly or even less frequent than that. So the data gets stale. So you have to have a way to continue to refresh that data. And what the report is showing today is that with 25% of organizations creating 25% of data coming from synthetic data elements, I think two things there. One is it's showing that there's a push away from mass production data. And I think that's a good thing, because if you'd be surprised and alarmed at the number of organizations who still use unmasked production data for testing, which is scary, a scary thought, especially in this day and age. So I think organizations are pivoting away from that, which is certainly a positive, but they're also recognizing the need that if I want to get features to the market faster, I have to be able to provision data on demand. And it's very difficult to do that at an enterprise-wide fashion with just mass production data. You need to be able to provision that new data, synthetically create that data on the fly, so that you can actually get to this true DevOps, DevSecOps, AI ops, whatever type of orchestration you want to leverage to be able to get to that. And I think synthetic data, just to double down, is how you're going to do that. And it's very encouraging to see the number of organizations that do leverage that increase. Now, it kind of, I know, dovetailing into some of the agile practices, just to touch on that really quick, there has been a significant shift in the industry. And this is something where I guess the first question I always get asked whenever I go to conferences or forums is is testing dead? Is the role that a quality engineer going to play within that software lifecycle ending? And admittedly, this is even something I get pushed on internally, and they're like, oh, development's not the first to go, it's testing. I wholeheartedly disagree with that. Testing is not dead. I think in Tal, I'd kind of mentioned this as you're beginning to use generative AI to create applications, create features, create code. You have to test that, and I think that becomes imperative. So if I look at the makeup of a test engineer today, there's a big push now on core quality engineering skills as well as generative AI skills. And the reason for that is if you're using generative AI to create code, you have to use an engineer to validate that code. And it's something that you can't do that just by leveraging. It's very difficult to do that today with the technology we have to use AI to test AI. So I think there still is manual intervention. So is quality engineering dying? No, but the skills that we have to use to stay relevant are changing. But that's been the case for the entire, the past, several decades. The skills change based off of trends, technology advancements, domain changes from an industry standpoint, and that will continue to happen. So am I going to be a pure play manual functional tester today? No, that's dead. That died several years ago. But the role of a test engineer is now changing. And I think you're going to start to see individuals with, a title of quality orchestrator. So as we begin to implement these agents, you'll need engineers to go ahead and control and direct these agents to perform specific activities. So from an agile perspective, again, the role of a test engineer is changing, and I think that's evident for everyone. And it's up to us to upskill. So if you look at one of the recommendations we had from the report last year is to develop robust upskilling and learning programs so that you can keep your team members up to date and relevant from an industry standpoint in terms of technology. The second thing is, as organizations begin to have decentralized, and I think that has caused issues from a data standpoint, and that was reflected in the report, as well as if you look at the number of organizations that have an enterprise automation strategy, it's 8%. And I think that's purely reflective on how organizations are structuring today. And so organizations are now beginning to adopt more of a hybrid approach where they have some core functions like automation strategy, performance engineering as an example, maybe definition of use cases and guidance from a generative AI standpoint that are enterprise-wide, that the organization can follow. But then if I look at the individual lines of business, value streams, portfolios, they're more decentralized and that they can define the specific, core skill set of their test engineers, the specific methodologies they may follow, as well as, the makeup of those individual agile pods. But by and large, they're more of this enterprise-wide hybrid function that how organizations are beginning to set up. So I think I found those kind of points very interesting. That's something that I've been attached to for a while. Tal, when you look at the report, are there any points that we did mention or any points we did mention that might warrant kind of a deeper look at?
So first of all, I like the way you referred to it's no longer testers, it's quality engineers, orchestrators, architects even. They will architect and govern the entire quality process, and quality in a much more broader sense of quality. It's not just quality of the deliveries, it's quality of the artifacts that take part in the life cycle, right? Because if you don't have, for example, a feature that is defined correctly and accurately, then you cannot generate tests, leveraging Gen AI, for example, right? So it's governing the entire, I would say, quality space. And it starts with very early phases. And I want to talk about other aspects of, you talked about that data sets for testing, a huge thing. But I can tell you, I like data in a broader sense because Gen AI outputs are as good as the data is, right? And I think everybody, talked about prompt engineering. Now everybody's are talking about context engineering, and it all depends on the context, on the knowledge, right? It's no longer a data lake, it's a knowledge hub. And I think, part of the things we're doing in our tools in making sure that we standardize the data in a way, to integrate the fragmented ecosystem that some of the customers still have today and make sure to consolidate, the data into a data platform, right? And when the data is there to use it properly, then I think, again, trust is, it'll help us to trust more, but more of, the quality of the deliveries, the artifacts that we generate, texts, for example. So I think data in a broader sense is a big thing. And I think another, I would say attribute that, engineers will need to have is, extracting those insights from the data, right? Like all of us will become kind of a data scientists in a way, right? Be able to look at data, be able to evaluate and assess the data, whether it's, good enough for us to use. And I think another thing, you touched on it, I think Jeff and Kanchan as well, observability data. So I think we'll need to find the effective ways, to take this data and this feedback loop, right? And make sure that, we're testing it right and we can improve. Now we'll hear the term like self-improved AI, right? And once you get the data, the insights from production system, from the observability systems, then we'll be able to improve and fine-tune ourselves. So another thing. And I think just the last piece is the culture, right? The psychology effect that everybody needs to have in order to be a good QA engineers and architects, but I believe we'll speak about that as well. So,
very good insights. Thank you for that. Maybe the last topic I want to have your views on, all of you, is there's of course an elephant in the room with the emergence and the adoption of AI and Gen AI, and that is how does this impact the human expert, the human quality engineer? Jeff, what is your view on that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm a staunch believer that quality engineering is not dying. And just like, I guess I was speaking at a conference recently, and I guess the example I have is if you look at the introduction of, the electric street lamp, or the introduction of automation as an example back in the 90s, early 2000s, there is this fear that, okay, an entire industry is going to die. But what it really does is it just evolves, and it creates additional work, creates additional opportunities for team members or engineers to take on new skill sets and new aspects of whatever that model may be. So when I compare that to agentic solutions, I think there is a general fear that, hey, we're going to be taken over. There's a countless number of movies where generative AI takes over the world. I'm personally not too afraid of that, and I correlate that back to quality engineering in that humans are involved, will be required, because if you look at comparing the ability of a model, they're very capable from agentic solutions, but it's just like having a child. A child can be very specific and good at an individual task, but if they have to deviate from that or they have to get creative, then that's where you start to have this drift and hallucinations where they get off task. So we're not at a point today where we've trained these models to the point where we can fully deploy them and say, I'm good to go. I think it's something where quality engineers are going to continue to be involved to support those, direct those, and correct the issues that they may have. And you will see some roles come to an end. Pure play manual functional testers, I don't think that role exists anymore. I think everyone is expected to have a certain level of expertise from an engineering standpoint. And again, I just kind of double down. I think you're going to have roles like quality orchestrator become in the loop, where you'll have an engineer controlling a series of agents to perform specific tasks. But their role isn't going away. They're still going to be there to control. So I think that, again, humans rest assured we're still necessary. Can't everyone go on holiday just yet? Tall or
Good. Kanchan, what is your take on this?
Yeah, so I think I agree completely with Jeff that humans or experts in the loop will certainly be needed as we go along, and the skills will start becoming more human than technical. Of course, we will need the technical architecture, ability to run all of these agents, to review them. I think as humans, the industry-wide, we can all say that review is not our best skill, so to say, with years of experience. But then those are the skills that we will need to really hone. Critical thinking, empathy, then understanding of ethics to a greater extent, and the complexity of the entire solutions that are going to evolve is going to be quite a lot. So that is one aspect I generally think about, that, okay, how exactly will things change? So today in the interim, I believe we will have slowly the number of testers, like the roles Jeff mentioned, will start coming down slowly as and when organizations start scaling these solutions. But at the same time, because of the same reason, we will see more and more humans needed for testing of GenAI. So that's a shift in the workforce we will see to begin with. And when that too really becomes like it matures over a period of time, then less and less people might be needed in that entire area. However, what I worry about is while we do this transition, we are relying heavily on the expertise of people. And that expertise gets built over a period of time because they are working in that area. They gain the domain knowledge, they gain the knowledge about technology, about how applications work, what systems are working. So how to keep on building that expertise is going to be one challenge that when we think about all of these things strategically or for a longer term, we will need to probably think about and build those skills very, very consciously, rather than just going with the flow and say, okay, let's just reduce the humans. So that is not going to be in the best interest overall in a longer term. So those are the things I think. So those are the things I think. And lastly, from my side, I say that eventually humans and AI, they will all need to coexist. Right? The roles will change as they have always changed across the years. They will certainly change, but then we will coexist as we have coexisted until now.
That's reassuring. Tal, what is your take on this? The role of the human and AI?
Well, I had a big philosophical question that we could for hours, but I definitely agree with everything that was said. We do see a lot of fear and a little bit of a resistance, right? Will we be replaced, exactly as you both said? And I think it's just a matter of, we gotta make sure to let the machine work for us, right? And we human, yes, it's about rethinking the roles. And by the way, the ones that will align and fine-tune themselves and embrace the change will be the one that, will be able to make it and really be successful, right, in those transformations or evolutions, right? But I will say two things in addition. I think business alignment and customer centricity will be key, because that will assist us as humans to fine-tune the flows, the task, what we need to do, and make sure that the goals are very much aligned with the business outcome we want to achieve. Because, we can collaborate with as many agents, like have agents talk to agents and do stuff, but it's not about doing stuff. It's about doing stuff that matters. And I think this is where, humans will play a key role. What matters, right? What makes us as a company stand out and differentiate? And as long as, as humans, we can understand that we can orchestrate, fine-tune, architect the systems better to work for us, and not just do work that, create even more noise, by the way, that could become distractive. And chaotic, I would say, right? Imagine an agentic framework that you don't have any control of what they're doing and what they're executing on. So I think business outcome, customer centricity, very focused on KPIs and defining those KPIs. And when we don't achieve the ROI we need to achieve, fix it. So I think that will become a key. Creativity. I think there will be a lot of room for creativity. And I completely agree with Kanchal. Experience. We'll need to find new ways of gaining this precious experience and seniority, right? Maybe ways for AI to help us ramp up in learning. So I think, it's a mind shift. It's a mindset, change, and the ones that will be able to adopt it faster will be the one that can differentiate and gain competitive. I would say, differentiate.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I want to thank you all for the insights that you have given so far on the World Quality Report. I want to thank the audience for listening in to this session. Of course, there's much more information in the World Quality Report. It provides you benchmark data, it provides you trend analysis, it provides you also recommendations. So you can download the report. There's a link here or a QR code that you can use to download the report. But please keep also watching on this channel, because there will be more information to be shared in the future. And we have also some room for the people that are joining here for Q&A. So we will go over to the Q&A. Thank you, speakers, for so far. And let's go to the Q&A now. Thank you very much.